welcome back everyone, it's me Matt. Really appreciate you stopping by on today's video. We're talking about howitzers again, and this is kind of a unique howitzer today. The FH-70, the 155mm towed howitzer, and you could somewhat call it in some regards a self-propelled howitzer too, in the way in which this gun system and gun platform works. The FH-70 is the 155mm gun of the past, unfortunately being replaced mostly around the world by the M777 and other platforms. However, most countries that are still using it today are using it very effectively, and it is still for sure a formidable platform for the artillery. Now the FH-70, being that it is a towed howitzer, is clearly not going to be charging across the plains with tracks and wheels like we see with the Caesar system or some of the more modern day systems of today. But it had a very good principle that was very unique to artillery of its time when it was being designed, in the fact that it could move short periods of distance via its own APU or auxiliary power unit to either change the angle of the gun or maneuver into a firing position. Now, I have a lot of respect for the FH-70 still being used today. It may not have all the fancy bells and whistles of the M777 with digitized systems, GPSs and etc. It still uses the more formalized standard optic sights that I'm used to working with the C3 howitzer, and it holds its own. At the end of the day, it's putting projectiles downrange, 155mm worth of it, and doing it very effectively. It may not be, assisted projectile kind of weapon system or more fancier reloading of the sort of automated system, as you can see here. It's more of a manual intervention of a gun, but it does what it needs to do. And for a, towed howitzer or a field artillery gun, it's pretty formidable in its capability. Of course, times have changed though. They want more high-tech technology, plug the system in, adjust with digitalization, and fair play, that makes sense, hence why the FH-70 is slowly being replaced around the world. But I do have a very strong sense of, respect for the gun that's still being used around the world today with certain military armed forces. Now, the FH-70 is a towed 155mm howitzer developed by an international consortium, which includes Vickers Limited in the UK, OTO Malaria in Italy, and Rheinmetall GmbH in West Germany. It was also manufactured in 3 of these nations during its decade-long production run, and it was also produced in a substantial quantity in Japan. The FH-70 program began in 1962 when a need for a new common NATO field howitzer was identified, and was initially a joint effort between the United States, the United Kingdom, and West Germany. Intending for the new weapon to be in service by 1970, the effort, dubbed the FH-70 or Field Howitzer for 1970, the future weapon was to replace the M114 155mm howitzers used by the US and West Germany and the UK's BL 5.5-inch or 140mm medium gun. Both were holdovers from World War II and they lacked common ammunition. The objectives of the program were highly ambitious to say the least, and included a very high towing speed, a requirement for a range of 24 km with conventional ammunition, 30 km with rocket-assisted ammunition, and the ability to fire 3 rounds in only 15 seconds, and 6 rounds a minute with burst fire, with a sustained rate of fire of 3 rounds per minute, and compatibility with all existing and projected NATO ammunition. However, as I mentioned before, by far the most unusual requirement of this gun, and one with far-reaching implications for future artillery development, was that the FH-70 was to have an auxiliary power unit or APU. This would not only provide hydraulic pressure for the massive gun and electrical power to also provide for lighting or other systems it needs, but also provide power directly to the wheels themselves, allowing the gun crew to literally drive it as a vehicle, though only short distances, to its location or to different firing positions. However, as has been the case with many international weapon programs, disagreements soon arose between the members of the consortium over what features the FH-70 was to have. It was basically a bickering match between countries as to what they wanted the gun to do. 2 issues that proved inconceivable to actually try and get by were that the US military demanded a gun that was significantly lighter in order to make it more easily transported by helicopters, speaking of the M777, and it refused to acquire a weapon fitted with the APU. As a result, the US actually broke away from the program and, in 1965, completely disbanded its project. And it actually developed its own indigenous alternative in 1969, which became the M198. The consortium to produce the FH-70 was officially formed in 1964, minus the US participation, and work began on prototypes in 1964. The development of the FH-70 proceeded very slowly, and testing of the fully functional prototypes didn't begin until 1969. However, the program received a much-needed boost in 1970 when Italy joined the consortium, pledging to share 25% of the expenses. The UK held another 25%, and West Germany held about 50%. Even though there was the additional Italian support, testing and evaluations weren't deemed complete until 1976. Deliveries of production of the FH-70s began in 1978, with the initial operation capacity, or OIC, being achieved later in that year. Though 1978 is often the date cited for the FH-70 to first become operational, it did not achieve full operational status with any of its users until 1980, which in some regards should really be known as the FH-80. The sighting system of the gun is pretty simplistic in its original form, however there was some modifications to allow the system to have an optional digital display unit, or DDU, which further aids the laying of the gun. The German and Italian armed forces have outfitted the FH-70s with DDUs, but the British armed forces never did. The standard crew of the FH-70 is 8 crew members, though it is possible to operate the gun with a crew of only 4, albeit with much slower operations. Interestingly, the tube life of the FH-70 is around 2,500 equivalent full charge firings, at which point the tube must be removed and replaced. The elevation assembly is carried on rather heavy trunnions, and the automatic loading system is not really fully automatic and consists of a loading tray and automatic tube loader which operate at any elevation or traversal. The breech is initially opened by hand, but the ammunition, propellant charges, and primers are normally loaded automatically. The breech block is semi-automatic and slides upward when opened. As the gun is loaded, a second shell is placed on the loading tray, which is automatically loaded after the first shell is fired, and the breech is reopened. When the breech block is in full recoil after firing, the breech is automatically opened by a cam, and the spent propellant casing is ejected as the next round is lifted into the breech for manual ramming. The entire loading sequence spans roughly around 5 seconds depending on the crew. These allow for continuous rates of fire of 2 rounds per minute, rapid fire over a short duration of up to 6 rounds per minute, or a burst fire of 3 rounds in 13 seconds. A fully automatic system with a flick rammer was also offered for the FH-70, which followed for firing 3 rounds in only 8 seconds. New ammunition was developed for the gun in accordance to the quadrilateral ballistics agreement between the US, UK, Germany and Italy. The intention was to maximize ammunition commonality between these nations, and the specifications set upon were those of volume, mass and general ballistics of the US-made M549 RAP-HE round, with a total mass of 43.5 kg and 11.3 kg of high explosive fill. The M549 still has the largest explosive charge of any RAP-HE round. Although the FH-70 was not adopted by the US military, US ammunition can still be fired from it, though the variations in sizes of US primers has resulted in some feeding problems. A range of common ammunition was developed for the gun, which were developed to increase the maximum range and lethality of the NATO 155mm projectile. The primary 3 rounds of FH-70 are the L15A1HE round, a thin-walled 43.5 kg projectile with 11.3 kg explosive charge, the DM105 base ejection smoke projectile, which splits into 4 smoke candles on descent, producing a dense white smoke cloud even over a wide area in 30 seconds, and the DM106 illumination round, which spawns a parachute flare on descent with an illumination power of 2.1 million candelas for 60 seconds. Also, the gun can fire some of the more modern fire extended range projectiles, such as the US Army's M549A1 RAP-HE round and the RB-30 Extended Range Base Bleed, or ERBB round, both of which have a range of around 30 kilometers when fired from this gun. The US Army laser-guided M712 Copperhead Cannon Launch Projectile, or CLGP, can also be compatible with this gun. A triple cartridge propellant charge system is used on the gun, i.e. 3 cartridges are normally loaded behind the projectile. There are 3 different propellant charges for the gun, with different level charges as cartridge 1, which provides charges 1 and 2, cartridge 2, which is used through charges 3 to 7, and cartridge 3, which is used as charge 8. With a maximum charge, this gun can fire an L15HE round to a maximum range of 24.7 kilometers, which, for a gun of this size, is pretty darn impressive. Now, the gun platform is technically not a vehicle, but it does have that limited ability to move like one, as the APU doubles as an engine. The APU is located inside an overhanging cab in the front of the carriage, with 2 seats on top of the left and the right of the driver and another crew member. The APU is the Volkswagen Model 127 1.8 litre diesel motor with 4 cylinders in a boxer configuration. It is air-cooled, spark-ignited, and produces around 71 horsepower. The fuel tank has a capacity of around 55 litres. When using the APU, the FH-70 may be unhitched, positioned, and ready to fight in less than 2 minutes. If a target is to be engaged outside the weapon's traversal range, once in its firing position, the trailing wheels may be lowered to the ground and the spades and trails raised, allowing the entire weapon to quickly swivel around to the required direction. Once the target is within the traversal range, the wheels are raised, dropping the trails back to the ground, and the spades are lowered. When the weapon is fired, the recoil from the first shot will embed the spades into the ground just like most self-propelled and normal howitzers of the field artillery. When propelled by the APU, the FH-70 is capable of achieving 16 km on road or on other hard surfaces and climbing up a 34% gradient. It can actually also ford in a river up to a depth of 0.75 meters. While being towed, the FH-70 can ford to a depth of 1.5 meters. The APU also drives the hydraulic pumps, which is used to elevate, depress, and traverse the weapon. It also raises and lowers the carriage to the position of transition between travelling and firing positions. The hydraulics may also be operated by a hand pump if the APU is removed or inactive, though this will obviously not provide the propulsion or electrical power or the speed to operate the weapon system quickly. Unfortunately, the FH-70 did not have a prosperous career. There was a lot of background problems that the gun had, whether it be the vulnerability to shell fragments and counter-battery artillery fire, to the APU and the way in which the system worked really not being that effective or reliable. Hydraulics were fairly complex on this gun too, and it was quite a maintenance beast, which when you want a gun to put rounds downrange, you do not want to be messing around with pipes, tubes, hydraulics, and oil. Sadly, in its peak time in 1987, its overall system reliability was around 51%, which is basically saying half the time, in some way or another, this gun did not do exactly what it was supposed to do. And that was really low, considering during the time it was supposed to be implemented during the Cold War, you want things to be working 100% of the time in case it really did kick off. Though despite its long and troubled development through time, the FH-70 did defy the odds and become a success overall though, with around 1,007 examples produced from 1977 to 1989. A total of 397 were acquired by the UK, West Germany and Italy, and with Norway and the Netherlands each eventually acquiring around 15. Malaysia became the first non-NATO customer acquiring 15 ex-UK weapons, with Oman acquiring 15 as well, while Morocco acquired 30 and later in the years of Estonia purchased 32, which is what we're looking at today. The largest export customer of the FH-70 is actually Saudi Arabia, with 72 examples, while an unpublished number of the FH-70s was also acquired by Lebanon. Perhaps the biggest surprise is that the largest user of the FH-70 is actually Japan, with some 460 more of them being used as we speak today. And that's aside from the initial import of 20 FH-70s, the remainder were all built actually locally under the license of Japan Steelworks. It's safe to say that the weapon system has done quite well in its service history, of course still being used today by some militaries around the world who don't want the fancy dumb-fangles of the M777 or some of the more complex artillery pieces, or some of the more, I guess, not as modernized weapon systems below the FH-70. For a 155mm howitzer, it really does have to do exactly what it needs to do perfectly, and I'm sure the reliability issues have been fixed since then. The fact that it can move itself is a pretty cool feature, but one that I think you don't want to get lost in its capability and thinking that is the key feature of the gun. At the end of the day, it is still just a 155mm gun that can be towed into location and move around now and then. So, there you have it folks, the FH-70. A big shout out from the article that was produced by Blacktail from Military Today. Thank you for the source of this information. Big credit to the developer who actually created this article. It's nice researching this gun and learning a little bit about it, especially as an artillery gunner myself in the Canadian artillery. I would love to put a round down on this thing and just to move it around. I'd love to be driving it. Can you imagine driving that thing around? It'd be absolutely incredible. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. I really appreciate you stopping by. If you did enjoy today's video, please leave me a like and a comment. I'd love to hear your experiences with this gun system if you have ever used it. If you want to be notified of any upcoming videos in the future, click the little bell by the subscribe button. And if you want to check out any of my support pages, Facebook, donation pages like PayPal or Patreon, and thank you to everyone who has been donating towards there, you can go check out my link description box below. Thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful day. All the best. Bye-bye.